in an interesting mode this morning. Apparently the flu is working its way through our guest list and co-host list. So he's still healthy, so he's here. Matt Harvey is the solo co-host this morning. Good morning, Matt.
I'm still here. I'm still standing.
You feel good?
I feel great. Yeah.
You gonna take your temperature or anything?
No. Don't do that. I don't want to know.
Screen or anything? You swipe screen?
Yeah. Right? I'm flu-free. I'm sitting in a chair that I've never sat in before, and all the time that I've been doing this show.
That's true. You moved to the co-host.
It feels like it's a big day for me.
Yeah, you've arrived.
Yeah, I got rid of that gill strap fella.
He's out in the Midwest signing books.
Yeah, he doesn't have the flu.
No, he doesn't. Well, we'll have to wait. He had something about 2 weeks ago. Our guest in this segment is Delegate Michael Hite. Michael, good morning to you.
Good morning, gentlemen. Good to be here.
Hey, how's your health, man? There's so much flu going around.
For me, I mean, so far I didn't get. I avoided the Capitol crud and the flu, so right now doing pretty well.
God bless. That's very good. Hey, I want to ask you if you heard the opening in the segment. You heard John Hardy, one of your former colleagues in the House and now a county commissioner, very concerned about this data center microgrid bill and its effect on tax revenues in the counties.
Yeah. I'm a little concerned about it as well. I voted for it out of the House, but my concern was the grab of the money of the county money to use for state purposes of trying to reduce the income tax, which I feel like we have triggers already in place for the income tax reduction. I don't know that we need to do money grabs from the counties to increase it faster. So I had a heartburn with that. I think the program overall is a good program and it's good legislation. I just didn't like that part of it.
Can that part be changed or amended in the bill, Mike?
Well, and that's what happened. I think John talked about that a little bit yesterday. That I think the negotiations are going on right now, and I think they've carved out 30 or 35%. Will go back to the counties. I don't know if I'd agree that that's enough, but that's what they've negotiated over on the Senate side.
Well, Delegate Hite, he alluded to the fact that a potential problem with this bill is that it's unconstitutional, that those revenues are supposed to, in full, go to the county. And there was an amendment on that a couple years ago that was voted down. So is there some concern that you're negotiating over something that's unconstitutional, could get challenged by any county and blown out of the books?
No, not at all. If that's the case, the counties will sue. They'll take it to the courts, and then the courts will side. That's just the process. That's part of the process that we see in the legislature all the time. So, I won't say all the time, but sometimes that we put out legislation and it goes to the courts and it's either upheld or it's struck down.
I know you're one of 100 down there and 134 in the total overall body. And I know that this is a big push by Governor Morrissey, but
correct.
I also know if you were a county commissioner, Mike, the idea of getting to keep 30% of what should be 100% of what you should have wouldn't be very satisfactory to you, correct?
Amen. I've heard it from all of them, too.
I'm sure you have. Does this bill look like it's going to pass?
I don't know at this point because I think they've had to modify it, so now it's got to come back to the House, and we have to concur. So I don't know. I'll be honest with you. It looks like it might at this point. I don't know. We'll see.
I think if you're a growth county, you probably don't want this overreach by the state government. If you're not a growth county, maybe this isn't as important to you. I don't know, but I know in Berkeley County, from the meeting we had yesterday with Gary Wine and John Hardy on the air, and reading about Eddie Gokenauer's testimony, this is very unpopular in Berkeley County. I
don't know. I would look at it the other way. If you're not a growth county, and you get something like this in your county and it's a source of revenue that you didn't have before, I would think it would be a bigger benefit.
Well, the data centers and microgrids aren't limited to growth counties. I think
that's correct.
There's probably a really nice attraction for some counties in southern West Virginia that aren't considered growth counties to have these facilities come in there with the cheap power and the water and such.
Yeah. And then that's going to happen, as I understand it.
Well, hopefully, but
in Berkeley County, where you're looking to try to get paid firefighters, and you're already down 3 dozen deputies in the sheriff's department, you need the tax revenue.
I'm just curious, and why that the revenues were diverted from the counties in the first place. And Delegate Hite, I don't know if you have any insight to that.
I think that was the governor's wish. I think the governor wanted to eliminate the personal income tax now, and he saw this as a way to do that. If the state were to get the money, he could eliminate the PIT immediately,
right,
or very quickly.
Hey, Mike, I know you have an abbreviated interview with us here this morning. You yell when you have to go, but the West Virginia Birth to 3 funding, as I understand it, has been gummed up in the House Finance by the chairman there, Vernon Criss, and it looks like these folks who haven't had a reimbursement increase in 22 years will go another year without one unless there's another way to do this. What do you know about this?
Well, the budget is an odd process that the House will put out a budget and the Senate will put out a budget, and it all starts with the governor handing us what he thinks the budget should be. And then the 3 sides sort of have to get together and come to a conclusion where they all 3 agree, and then that is presented back to both bodies for a final vote. So that final version I have not seen yet. So, I know there's lots of people working to get additional monies in there for Birth to 3. So I really don't know what to say until I see the final version to see whether or not they got their wish or not.
There is another way, I understand. You can't I'm told you cannot mandate a salary increase you can't mandate salaries as a delegate. But I think Chris's objection was that there's already enough money in that budget they could do the reimbursement increase on their own.
For Birth to 3?
Yes.
I don't know. I would have to look at that. I know that is the case with the IDD waiver. We looked at that several years. I'm a whole lot closer to that one, and that's exactly the way we felt. Is the money has always been there for the rate increases, and yet for some reason the Department of Human Services decided not to. Why that is, I have no idea. I think they're allowed to move money around over there. They can move 5% of their total budget around, and then in order to do that, they have to take it from different line items. And I think that's what they do. Is there's certain ones that they move around from every year. I think IDD is one of them, and Birth to 3 could be one of them. So they use them sort of as backup funds rather than what they're supposed to be used for and what the legislature has allocated that money for. So I sort of think that's what happens from time to time, and that's why they don't want to spend all the money in those line items on what it's supposed to be used for, is because then it's not available for them to use in other places.
Are you finding out any more about Medicaid as it flows from the federal government down to the state, Mike?
No, not whether or not they're going to cut Medicaid or anything like that. I haven't heard any more from the feds about that or how that would affect us.
All right, Mr. Harvey, do you have a question for Mr. Hite before we have to let him go to what he has to do?
No, I just say, well, what is going to be with only a couple of days left, what has to get across right now? Or not across, but what has to get finalized right now?
Obviously, the budget has to be done in the next couple of days. And there's a couple of important pieces of legislation. I guess it depends on what somebody's interpretation of important is.
Well, what's your interpretation of important?
If I were to say my most important thing left, other than the budget, is the Ibogaine trials legislation. It's on the Senate side. Ibogaine is a psychedelic drug that some places have shown some promise in treating PTSD and substance abuse and traumatic brain injuries with the use of this drug. And we have legislation right now to allow for trials in West Virginia.
Didn't that strike out in Kentucky?
It did strike out that they were going to do it, and then they had a new administration come in, and that new administration nixed the project. So it didn't happen. It's happening right now in Texas and several other states. There's legislation being passed. West Virginia is one of them. That's why I mentioned that. On Monday, I have to fly out to Aspen for a conference on this particular thing for all the states that are trying to pass legislation right now. So I think that's probably one of the most important pieces of legislation we may pass this year, if it shows the promise that we're seeing in some of the other trials.
Yeah, I know that Governor Perry is a big proponent of that, but I've heard a lot of criticism as well. So that'll be I'm gonna have to follow that. I didn't realize that was moving in West Virginia.
Yeah. Yep.
Very good. Mike, thank you very much. If there's anything else you want to make sure people are aware of, now's the time to do it.
Nope, just counting down the hours, brother.
Well, you get home safely whenever that day occurs.
He's going to Aspen.
All right.
That's
Thank
true.
you, gentlemen.
That's
cold
true.
there.
Yeah. See you later, Michael.
Thank you, brother. Bye-bye.
Delegate Michael Hite.